The Bloggers Roundtable. I can't believe there hasn't been a panel like this before where we got all the long-term bloggers together in one room to talk about blogging. Kevin LaCroix is the author of the D&O Diary. He's a lawyer and insurance intermediary of RT ProExec. Steve Quinlivan is the author of the Dodd-Frank blog. He's with the law firm Stinson out in Minneapolis. Lyle Roberts is in Washington, D.C. here with me. He's with Shearman and Sterling. He does a 10b5 daily blog. And then Francis Pileggi is with Brisbois, and he's been authoring the Delaware corporate and commercial litigation blog forever too. I'm Brock Romanek, today on Zippy Point. So here I am with my fellow long-term bloggers. This is quite a crew we have. Sydney Posner is also out there as a long-term blogger, but she wasn't able to make it. But I'm so excited to have Lyle, Kevin, Steve, and Francis with me. We're going to tackle 4 different questions, and I'm going to answer each question that I ask first, given that I've been blogging the longest. And the first question is, how did you get into blogging? And so for me, I was reading about it in a marketing magazine, and at that time, never had heard of the term blog, and it sounded weird. To me, it's like the word food. I mean, if you think about it, the word food is such a weird word. Blog is such a weird word. And reading the article, it talked about it essentially being a diary. And I was like, who would want to read my diary? I actually haven't had a diary since high school. And I did have one in high school for a little while. So I decided to try it. And it took about a week I had an intern who was a college student who was tech savvy to set up the software. Nowadays, there's off-the-shelf software. This is back in 2002. I'm coming up on my 20th anniversary next year. And so the software is up. And then in terms of my writing style, I had no examples to draw from. So my first blogs, if you go look at them on the corporatecounsel.net, that first year of blogs are all up there. They're very rudimentary. They don't even have a title for each entry. There's literally just like a little piece of garbage. And it wasn't quite daily, but close to it. Lyle, how about you? How did you get into blogging?
Well, Brock, I think I was really sort of poking around the internet and seeing a few, legal blogs here and there, but nothing that was really in my space. So I do securities litigation, and there really wasn't anything that focused there. And so I thought to myself, well, maybe there's a little niche there that I can fill and might be interesting to do. And I thought I would, give it a try. And then, that was 2003, and here we're in 2021 and still going at it.
You were definitely one of the first. Kevin, how about you? How'd you get into it?
In spring 2006, I changed jobs. I went from running a D&O underwriting facility to being part of a client advisory firm in the insurance space. So I was in a client service business without any clients, which is not a great place to be. So I needed to do something to keep from going crazy and also to kind of keep my hand in. I was aware, actually, Brock, Francis, Lyle, Steve, I was aware of your blogs. And kind of aware of the idea. So I was a little bit ahead of you, Brock. But I just started playing around with the blogger app on Google. And before I knew it, I had a blog. I had no plan. I had no goal that I was setting out to achieve or anything like that. I really was just kind of experimenting with the technology. And before I knew it, I had a blog. And then I was drawn up in the competition of trying to keep up with you guys. So I had to keep posting things and just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And next thing I knew, I had a blog that had been running for a while.
Steve?
I guess I was inspired by you, Brock. The Dodd-Frank Act was percolating around Congress. It kind of had a long-winded name. Shortly before it was passed by the Senate, it was renamed the Frank-Dodd Act. I went into the office kind of early one morning because I had an appointment with a physical therapist. And I read that it had been renamed the Dodd-Frank Act at the request of Barney Frank. So I went off and bought the domain names, never having been to GoDaddy.com before. Asked the marketing people at our firm to start a blog, and they assured me it would never happen because it was too expensive and there was malpractice concerns and ethical concerns. But they thought about it for a couple of weeks and came back with a blog to use.
And how about you, Francis?
Well, it was way back in 2004, and I realized at the time that when people wanted to find out about a lawyer, they no longer went to Martindale Hubbell, at least not primarily. And so I was interested in having some impact on what people read when they Googled my name. And then I came across Kevin O'Keefe, who all of you may know is the founder of LexBlog. and I realized that he provided a turnkey operation in terms of the what I'll call the backroom software aspects, and all I had to do was provide the content. And then, to my amazement, nobody had reserved the name Delaware Litigation, and so I thought that would be a fruitful and productive source of information for my blog, and the rest is history, I suppose.
Yeah, getting those domain names early is definitely important. It's much harder now to come up with a interesting title. And the blog I just launched for Perkins Coie Public Chatter, I was amazed that URL was not taken. So now we're going to talk about story ideas. So actually, this video is actually a good example of what I call the journalist's ear. I actually had emailed Francis about a personal Delaware law question, and he responded. And I was, thinking about you, Francis, and I was like, there's never been a program with all the long-term bloggers just together talking about how this came to be. And so I think once you're blogging for a while, you start developing that journalist's ear. Just something quirky in a conversation, or you're watching a TV show, can cause you to jot down a few notes. And for every blog that I run, I know I've thrown 5 away. When I left the corporatecounsel.net, there was hundreds of blogs that I've been carrying forward for years and years, and just ended up deleting them all. So obviously I also get ideas from recent developments in our space, and also ideas from the community. But usually it's just, paying attention to my email, paying attention to what I'm thinking about. That tends to spark an interest. Lyle, how about you?
I think for me, Brock, it's really changed over the years, because when I first started blogging, as I said, there really wasn't anything in my space. So I was really interested in covering, a pretty wide range of things, in the sense of covering news developments, covering judicial developments, covering all kinds of things that touched on securities litigation. But over the years, as we've had all these other resources kind of flow into the legal space, so Law 360 being a really good example, where most people are really interested in securities litigation, or getting that fed into their emails every morning, and are looking at it. I think I've kind of changed a little bit to be really more narrow in focus, and really try to focus more on where I think I can value add to the community, which is more around judicial cases and judicial developments, and trying to kind of see the patterns in the case law and where things are going. And so for me, when I think about, where am I coming up with my ideas, it's really about being on top of the case law and trying to keep up with it, read it. And I try to look at every PSLRA case that gets decided in the federal courts, just to kind of and then take those threads from other cases I know about and try to link them all together.
That makes sense. Kevin?
Well, the source I love the best is when I get ideas from readers. I do have readers that will send me a note basically saying, you didn't get this from me, but this happened, or what do you know about this? That's really my favorite source, because it's the twin beauty of having an interesting idea suggested, but also knowing it's of interest to the readers at the same time. Like Lyle, I spend a lot of time looking at the reporters and various other websites, trying to keep up with things. But every now and then I'll have one of those things that just comes into my head, and those are my favorite. And maybe it's part of what you were saying, Brock, about the journalist ear, but it's a little bit more than that. It's just, I'll just have an idea. Something will occur to me. And those are the ones that I love. I put the most energy into, I look back on with the greatest, gratitude for having the opportunity to have a place to publish it. So when I'm lucky, I'll have one of those kind of thoughts. On a good day, maybe I'll get an idea from Brock from one of your sites, or Lyle from your site, or Francis, any source that I can find with a good idea. But I'm always out there. Like Lyle said, I'm always out there scouring, trying to find things. And some days I find good things, and some days I don't.
Yeah, I really feed off my pet peeves. How about you, Steve?
Sometimes you can spend more time looking for ideas to blog about than blogging. But as you know, the SEC is fairly transparent with their rulemaking agenda, so you can get emails every day about what's going on. The enforcement actions, it can take a bit of time to plow through those on a regular basis, but you get kind of good at it. If it's about some individual, and if Section 15B action, he just stole money from his client and you don't have to read it. I look through the Chancery court decisions a couple of times a week. And if there's a simple storyline that's easy to write about, sometimes I tend to blog about that as well.
And Francis?
Well, it's easy for me because I primarily cover the Court of Chancery and the Delaware Supreme Court on corporate and commercial cases. And as you all know, it's a very prolific court. It's common for 50, 60, 70, 80-page decisions. And within the past few weeks, we had multiple decisions over 100 pages long. We had one within the past month or two over 200 pages long. So there's no shortage of material. The real challenge is to decide, since you can't possibly write on everything, to pick and choose what you're going to write about. So as far as finding topics, that's the least of my challenges when it comes to blogging.
Yeah, I found that to be the biggest surprise. When I was determined to blog daily, I always thought, well, I'm never going to have enough content to do that. And then over the years, I started having more and more blogs on the compensationstandards.com and dealawyers.com. And a couple of them on the corporatecounsel.net. And there was still, like I said, many blogs that I threw away. So there's always enough to blog about, because you can literally blog about nothing, just like Seinfeld. So let's talk about the pros and cons, what's rewarding and which aspects are the hardest. For me, obviously, having someone read my content is the biggest reward. But I think I do it for more than that when I really think about it, because when you're writing that content and you're pushing it out, unless you do hear some feedback, you don't know really if anyone's reading it. And over the years, I've found that I get actually less and less feedback. People are out there are busy, or maybe I'm getting too old, so younger people are scared of me, or somehow I'm more bald. I don't know why, but I feel like I've gotten less feedback. Maybe fewer people are reading my content. But also I find that I do blogging to build my own confidence. It helps me organize my thoughts, keep myself sharp on the latest developments and sane in a way. Definitely during the pandemic, I really missed working, and that's why I ended up making all these videos. And then of course, on the negative side, the hardest part is that you're putting in a lot of hours. You know, for me, I don't have an editor, so there's going to be typos, but I'm trying to catch those. And there certainly is some content that I'm producing that no one's going to read because it's garbage. Lyle?
Yeah, I think I would echo probably a lot of things that you said, Brock. Obviously, getting to interact with other people that have your same interests, right? I mean, I think people who blog about whatever the topic is, it's because they're really interested in that topic, right? They're passionate about it in one way or another. And so getting to interact with other people who feel the same way and are really interested in it, that's obviously a very rewarding part of it. And I think, in addition, kind of feeling like maybe that you're more on the cutting edge of the law and participating in it a little bit is a fun part of it for me as well, right? So blogging is part of that, amicus writing is part of that. For lawyers, I think that kind of feeling like, hey, even if just at the margins, if you're kind of pushing things along, that's also, I think, a very rewarding feeling as well. On the hard part, I think I would echo what you said a little bit too, which is it requires dedication, right? In the sense that you're putting out content and you want your readers to get that content. Your readers are expecting to get it. And so there's always that little bit of pressure, to get things done. And, sometimes, if you have to tell your spouse, you're not coming to bed because you're blogging at 11 o'clock at night, that can be, that can be a tough sell at home. But, it's one of the things that comes along with doing this.
Yeah, I remember early on when I did take a day off and didn't blog, and I did get emails from a few people saying, hey, how come you didn't blog yesterday? And I was like, geez, the blog is free. Kevin?
So I echo what both of you, Brock and Lyle, said, but I will add an aspect of blogging that I really didn't anticipate, which is that the internet is on 24/7 and it's on all over the world. And I would say 40% of my readership is outside the United States. And as a result of that, I have developed not only a great readership out in the United States, but actually a following that has led to business and to really interesting invitations to travel literally all over the world. I have been in meetings as diverse places such as Beijing, Mumbai, Singapore, Sao Paulo, Tallinn, Estonia, Dubrovnik, Croatia, a wide variety of places. And everywhere I go, I meet people who have read the D&O Diary, which never ceases to amaze me. And that's really rewarding, and in fact, exciting. And the fact that it's led to my developing an international practice is really kind of gravy. The hardest part, I'm just going to echo what Brock and Lyle said, with the added fact that I'm kind of miserable when I can't find something to write about. And it really is, it's more than just, gee, I'm not going to be able to put out a blog post tomorrow. It's more like I'm not fulfilling my commitment to my readers. It's really kind of a dark psychological space. So I'm always really happy when I find something that I know I want to write about, because then it's clear to me what I'm going to do. But when it's not clear what I'm going to do, it gets dark. And that's even worse than having my wife call out at 11 o'clock at night, where are you and why haven't you come to bed? So, but it's an emotional roller coaster sometimes because of the time pressure that your other professional obligations and your commitment to the quality of your blog. So keeping up with all of that can put some pressure on you.
And you do such a great job, Kevin, when you do go to those far-flung places, which I thought were just vacations, but I see you got some work out of it. But that you blog about going there and you show the pictures and you get into it. And Mark Suster does a both sides of the table blog in the venture capital space, and he's converted his theme of his blog entirely to healthcare, his own health, your own health and well-being. Which is pretty amazing. I don't think he's blogged about VC related stuff in quite a while. And he might have a bigger following because he's blogging about keeping yourself healthy. Steve, what about you?
As you say, the recognition is nice. It's unpredictable, sometimes few and far between, but it's always nice to be recognized for helping people. I find it relaxing to read about topics I enjoy on and blog about it. So it doesn't really seem like work. And the downside, in a law firm, you really don't get billable hour credits for blogging. You might get some recognition or some nice thanks, but when you get busy and you kind of get out of it, it's sort of hard to get back into to get back into the tempo and the pace of doing it on a regular basis.
Francis?
I'd say that among the rewarding aspects of it are when the local members of the court tell me that they read it and they make their law clerks read it, and other local lawyers who say they sometimes use it for research. Because now I guess over the past 16 years, I've accumulated a fair number of cases on topics. So some people say if they're looking for a particular case, that before they go to Lexis, they go to my blog. But I think that even more rewarding is that, I think more rewarding than that, it makes me a better lawyer, because even though I might otherwise read the cases, when you have to write about it, you're usually going to retain the information a lot better than if you're just reading them and then you never look at that case again. So I think it makes me a better lawyer. That's rewarding.
How about a negative?
Takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's mostly nights and weekends, and I commiserate with the others on the panel that a lot of times 11:30 at night, my wife will say, "Why are you still up and working on that blog?" And she gets the same answer most of the time. Hopefully, it won't be too much longer, but it's really important for me to do this.
Yeah, it's obvious that all of us care very deeply about the blogging. So we're going to end with a last word. What one piece of advice you would give to someone that's new to blogging? And my advice is to start somewhere. Blog about cats. Blog about something you know and love. You don't have to tell anyone you're blogging about cats, but just to find out what it's like and get some confidence. And then don't feel shy about pinging a fellow blogger. I think any of us would help anyone out. Me in particular, I love to give tips on the site design. I'm brutally honest, and how usable, how easy it is to navigate and read the content that you're putting out there. What about you, Lyle?
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of have your own tone and voice. So, I think when you look at a lot of blogs that are, let's call them corporate blogs, right? They have a sort of very painfully neutral kind of tone and voice to them, so that they're not actually very enjoyable to read. And I think I think readers of blogs get a lot more out of them and become frankly more attached to them if they have kind of a consistent kind of tone and voice that's coming through in the blogging. And I think, when you look at everyone on this, in this group's blogs, you see that. And, it doesn't have to be chatty. I certainly wouldn't describe my blog as chatty at all, but I do think it's very, I do think it is consistent. And I think people kind of have come to understand what they're getting and what they're reading and kind of how I'm approaching these, what I'm writing about.
Kevin?
I would say stick with it. I think a lot of people start a blog. Maybe they have an idea. Maybe they have some things they want to write about, and then they get busy or they get frustrated or they run into technical challenges. Maybe they run out of the original ideas they had. But it's like that's the moment where you really need to push through, because if you can get beyond that and really, get your momentum going, that's when the rewards come in. I think all of us can think of blogs that we saw and we liked and that came out with a big flash and looked really interesting. And then they just kind of died away. And maybe that's inevitable for professionals who are trying to do something like this on the side. But I think if you push through, if you stick with it, that's where the rewards are. And so stay focused. Brock, you're great at helping them to get started. Mine is once you're up and running, keep going. Keep going. Don't give up, because that's when you can really get your own corner of the internet that's yours and you can lay claim to.
Yeah, there's still a lot of space out there. Steve?
I would say find a topic that's practical, where you can get advice to other people to help them keep current without reading all kinds of press releases or plowing through 300 publications or emails a day. That's useful to people and saves them time.
Francis?
I think I would echo what everyone else said, but I think I would just add that you should find a niche, but you should be prepared to spend a fair amount of time when other people might be sleeping or enjoying recreational activity. Because unless you stick with it and do frequent blogging, I don't think it's going to be as effective. And depending on the subject matter, you're going to need to spend a lot of time on it to do a good job.
Yeah, my rule of thumb is that you should have an entry about once a week on average. That should be your minimum. If you go longer than that, then it starts to feel like a dormant blog. So I think we have 100 years almost worth of blogging represented on this panel. That's a little bit scary in itself. I just thought of that. Triple digits. In a couple of years, we'll have to redo this program to celebrate our 100th year anniversary as a group. So thank you very much. That's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us, Brock.
Thanks very much, everybody.